This episode of the BeanCast is brought to you by Methodify by Delvinia. Get real-world customer feedback in hours, not weeks. Schedule your demo and get a free $20 Amazon gift card. Go to methodify.it/BeanCast and Methodify it today. Bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Visit them on the web at recursivesquirrel.com. Episode 587. S-Hot and Diverse. For Monday, April 6th, 2020. It's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob Norp. Thanks for joining us. With digital platforms and shipping infrastructure stretched to the breaking point, should brands be marketing and fulfilling non-essential products? That's just one of the questions facing brands during quarantine. So tonight we'll talk ethics and legal pitfalls. Also, whether coronavirus is improving Facebook's image, a look at when political ads will return, the cancellation of Cannes, plus this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the social and influencer communications lead for global markets at IBM, Ms. Brandy Boatner. Brandy, I finally got you back on the program. It only took a pandemic.
Thanks, Bob. I'm so happy to be here, and if it only took a pandemic.
Now, next up, we have the U.S. Head of Brand Strategy for Ogilvy, Mr. Jason Lonsdale. Jason, welcome back, man.
Thanks, Bob. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm cooped up, but doing well.
Crazy times.
Now, also with us, we welcome back the co-host of Across the Pond and digital transformation consultant, Mr. Samuel Mani. Sam, what's going on, man?
Hey, Bob. Hanging in there. Hopefully the audiences and the fellow panelists are. We're looking forward to the show.
Yeah, I know I am. It's a great lineup here. And rounding out that lineup, he's Associate Vice President of Marketing Strategy at Arizona State University. Mr. Adam Pierno joins us. Hi, Adam.
How are you, Bob? Great to be back with you.
Great to have you on the program. Well, the topic I wanted to lead off with this week is the one about ethics, about a lot of the legal landmines that are potentially out there and the ethics of what we should be doing and shouldn't be doing. Consumers and brands are in a very strange dance with each other at the moment. With everything about the relationship pretty much going digital, many questions about ethics and legality are coming to the forefront. Things like, should we be buying non-essential items when warehouse workers and shippers are in such danger? Or what are the challenges surrounding promotions and fulfillment? And there's a whole bunch of more questions like that, Sam. The ANA issued some guidance on much of this last week. What's your opinion about the issued guidance, and is it enough at this point for brands to follow?
Well, thanks, Bob, for that one. I think I didn't actually read it, and I issued this 31-page of guidance, and it was all in legalese. So I didn't get through all of it, but I am an expert on force majeure clauses and the UK UK doctrine of frustration. So if anyone wants to contact me about that, I actually am an expert on those things. And actually, looking through that, it was kind of very rigorous and very robust, but it was very much legally driven. And it was interesting to read through that, and it's thinking, the first is a starting point to kill your lawyer in this kind of COVID-19. So that kind of made me a bit
Well, most legalese or legal documents are mainly to justify corporate legal fees. So, I mean, we're really excited. I'm sure the lawyers were very excited to get that document and justify their job for yet another few months.
It seems like the lawyers will be very busy. And as you talked about ethics, for me, the starting point of all this is a lot of the economies that Western economies are driven by consumerism and consumption, and that sort of drives the economy, and that normalcy of spending and buying is a critical piece. So when it comes to ethics of how we live and how we I don't know, how we experience life, spending is actually a positive contribution, and it's keeping people in jobs. It's giving small moments of joy, and cash flow is the lifeblood of businesses. So it's
I
tough,
agree with you.
I empathize with.
I hate to interrupt you so quickly, but it's just like I agree with you so much on that point. Yet you have news programs showing Amazon warehouse workers getting up on their high horse and getting really, really upset about people ordering things like vibrators. I mean, it's just like people are upset about not being able to focus on on essential items at the expense of. I mean, you know what I'm saying. I mean, it's just like having to focus on
so what are
products
people
other
ordering? What
than
are
essential
people buying?
items.
And so there's a big dilemma, big discussion about what people are or aren't buying. Now, if you're buying food items and necessities and hoarding toilet paper, yes, that's one thing. But some of the other items, it's fair enough to say, look, is this valuable? Is this needed right now? There's the argument, yes, it's contributing to the economy. There's also the downside of, well, can we wait? Can we actually be more mindful? And it's a hard one. And I know that Amazon workers have been protesting, and I think Instacart in the US, they went on strike because the workers were asking for hazard pay, they were asking for hand sanitizer, they were asking for sick pay. And as it kind of merges into the worker conditions and the environment that they're in, there's a really serious concern. And there's mixed perspectives on different sides of the pond. In the UK, a lot of the companies there are under a serious pressure as to why are you putting people in this environment, whereas in the US, I think there's less of that reticence. It's like, we need to keep the economy going. So there's different schools of thought about continuing and operating as normal. So I mean, that's just one perspective, I think, on the workers and the company rights side. But I have seen companies now taking a step back and actually really looking to support their employees and more overtly actually looking to improve conditions, making them feel valued, making them feel cared for, and also putting that out from a PR, but also an actual change in their policies and strategies.
Yeah, that was part of the ANI guidance as well. I mean, they were talking a lot about the legal liabilities of putting workers in a risky situation. And Brandy, I mean, when you look at it from that standpoint, you can totally see the point of the workers, that they're being put in dangerous situations. Why are you ordering, video games when we need to be focused on essential goods at this critical time? But at the same time, we have the economy to think about and keeping businesses all these businesses have employees who need to be kept busy and need to be kept, profitable in some way, shape, or form. Is it our civic duty to be shopping? Is it okay for brands to be marketing, or should we be focused only on essential products at this point?
I think it's okay for brands to be marketing but we have to be sensitive and not be tone deaf when we are marketing. But at the same time, you have to think there are no rules for what to buy during a global pandemic. If that book exists, can someone share it with me? Aside from if you are, a single, unmarried, no kids female that is, missing human touch, connection with friends, you're single, maybe bitter, and you thought 2020 was going to be hopeful and you would be more available. And that hasn't, happened because of a pandemic. You're going to tell me what I can and can't purchase if I want to get a vibrator, or if I don't, because it's a pandemic, I'm not allowed to do that. So
Yeah.
I think there's, you have to look at, of course, there are, people who are delivering food or putting their selves, at risk. People who, are ordering, who are still ordering things that they might need, teachers who might need, materials. And now that we're working from home, some people might need a monitor or might need things, for this new reality. So there's no real rule book, but I do think we have to be sensitive in terms of marketing and what we're suggesting and what we're saying. I think everybody agrees we don't want to put lives at risk. We don't want to endanger others, but we do want to, Bob, your point, we do want to keep some forms of commerce running in order for people to have jobs and not have, unemployment numbers continue to skyrocket like they are.
One of the points that really stuck out for me in all these articles that I was culling from this week's news cycle was this idea that promotions and fulfillment right now are particularly problematic. Jason, when you think about advertising and marketing, doing promotions, doing giveaways, sweepstakes, other things, that's kind of a a linchpin of marketing promotion. Yet, is it wise to be doing things like that to drive interest, to drive awareness? I mean, is that something that's or is that causing too many problems for the brand, not only from a PR standpoint, but also from a fulfillment standpoint at this stage?
Look, I'm gonna park the fulfillment question for a moment, but the other half of that is right now it's tacky. It's equally tacky that I'm getting emails from every company that I've ever bought anything from explaining their position on COVID. I don't really care. That DTC sheet brand that I bought a set of pillowcases from. I don't really care. But yeah, using it as an opportunity for outreach and promotion, no. If you're doing something interesting to help, tell me about it. Reach out to me as a constituent and get my support. But leaning into the promotion space right now, it feels really tacky. I just want to go back to the previous point as well, because we sort of started talking immediately about Amazon and Instacart and companies like that. And the other angle that I've been thinking about a lot lately is the impact of COVID on small business in this country.
It's devastating.
99.9%, literally 99.9% of businesses in this country are small businesses. And they employ 50% of the workforce, 65% of new hires, and they contribute, I think, 44% of non-farm GDP. And they're the ones who are really suffering. If we buy less from Amazon, Bezos gets one less, super yacht. Who cares? But we've all got these little businesses in our hoods, in our communities, who are really suffering. The average small business, 25% of businesses don't have cash to survive 30 days, right?
But I mean, let me caveat that by saying that, although we can say Jeff Bezos gets his cut of the pie, I mean, 60% of all Amazon sellers are not directly through Amazon. I mean, it's using Amazon services, et cetera, and, maybe using their warehouse and drop shipping, but it's just like, enables a lot of these small independent businesses to have an online presence at a crucial time.
I don't disagree with you, Bob. My point is that our small local businesses are being disproportionately hurt.
Yeah.
Look, I'm making a blatant appeal to your listeners at this point. If you can support any of your local businesses right now, please do. I've got an amazing diner up on the corner that I love. I take the family there every week. I've been getting takeout from there. I've bought gift cards from there because it's a small family business. I want to see them stay afloat. So I think it's easy for us to talk about the impact of this virus in terms of big corporations. I think it's really interesting, and there's a tragedy that we can avert by framing it in terms of smaller businesses too. If we're going to be more conscious about where we spend our money and perhaps where we buy our vibrator from, a small locally owned vibrator emporium rather than a e-com multinational.
I'm pretty sure even if you buy them on Amazon, you're buying from a local vendor somewhere. Adam, what's your take on all of this? I mean, it's just like, obviously legal is going to weigh in every situation. But, looking at the ANA guidance, it's pretty comprehensive on a lot of different issues. But what are you seeing as the biggest issues facing brands, and what are the common sense solutions that you would recommend?
The common sense solution is to wait for your opportunity that makes sense for your brand. I mean, you mentioned promotions and sweepstakes type communications, and I think it was Brandy, or I can't remember exactly who just jumped right in and said that's tacky, and I applaud that comment. Maybe it was Jason. It's tacky a lot of the time, but especially right now. So I think the common sense solution is slow down and be thoughtful about how you're responding. This is a challenge we're seeing in almost any type of communication that you had in the pipeline as a brand, is that 3 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 6 months ago, it made perfect sense. The context of your audience's lives was a heck of a lot different than it is right now. And now if you look at a lot of puns and a lot of messaging that would have been thought very safe, charming even, now it's like, whoa, that you can't say that right now. That's totally inappropriate. At the same time, you see a lot of spots that were quickly put together of brands that were showing nobody on the street and a lot of employees and people on Zoom calls together to show that the company is still up and running and they understand what you're going through. And the first 2 or 3 times I saw it, I thought, oh, I get it. That's clever. They got that done pretty quickly. And then now it's trite. Yeah. So, it was a common sense solution at the point of attack at that 2 weeks ago mark. And now it's what's the next thing? And I don't think people haven't, just like any other part of this pandemic, I don't think brands have a really good plan for what does common sense look like when we're a month into this.
Is timing,
it's a struggle.
Does everybody agree that basically the biggest ethical pitfall that people can fall into right now is just a matter of timing?
Yeah, I'll jump in there, Bob, because for me, I've been looking at this, and if you think about it, a lot of marketing, I think a lot of bad marketing is set it and forget it. And so the ability to pivot and be agile and be responsive and really from the outside in, be so close to your consumer and culture that you're reflecting and empathizing with them real time. It's still not a muscle that a lot of marketing organizations have, and especially over the last few years, despite the economy growing, I've still seen a lot of marketing organizations being driven by more whether the CFO will approve it and more of a financially driven agenda. And so the set it and forget it. I created my spots 3, 5, 6, 9 months ago. I've got to run them to make sure I've got the budget next year. So we've seen toilet paper brands advertising when there's shortage, because they probably have to spend those dollars in their ad budget so they get it next year. So I think timing is such a critical thing, and it's there where you actually need to be looking at different people in your organization and empowering them to actually be able to do that. And so I know, and I'm sort of apologizing for the whole of marketing, all of those stupid emails about, hey, here's our point of view on COVID-19 that we've talked about before. That's not really coming from marketers. That's probably coming from a different department or different division who've said, we have to get a message out, and it's making marketing look bad. So I think marketers need to step up, to stand up, and to use this timing to push the agenda of innovation. There's a company called Stage It, and they're running online virtual concerts with artists, and you can pay to participate and to have that kind of more intimate experience. And there are like drag artists, people from RuPaul's Drag Race, they've been having events on a regular basis. And if you look at it, there's people looking for entertainment. They have artists or bands or performers they're passionate about, and actually the virtual technology is a great way to engage with that audience. And so depending on who you are and your understanding of your consumer and your audience, I think timing is awesome to pivot, to innovate, and to disrupt, and to bring consumers with you, because I think a lot of the big brands and a lot of the traditional brands will just do the feel-good ad to manipulate your emotions, but there's no real substance behind it.
Well, good point.
Can I build on that?
Yes, please.
I think you're right on the money. I think the brands who do a nice, UGC cut together film, yeah, great, fine, spend your money. But where are the brands who are putting their money where their mouth is? Where are the brands who are actually doing something about this? Actions speak louder than words is like one of the oldest truisms in the world. And the list of brands that are actually finding a way to meaningfully contribute to this pandemic, to help in this pandemic, is pretty thin on the ground, to be honest. And you can argue that it's not the brand's responsibility, government, but brands advertise at the expense of doing things, kind of get my back up.
Yeah, and that's a challenge, because this thing about purpose and value has been fluffy in the last few years. It's become more provable. Right now, this is where you're screwed, because if you thought purpose was fluffy, you haven't been working on it. You don't actually have it in the DNA of your brand. You don't actually have it. So there's a brand called Lifebuoy, which is a Unilever brand, and they've been working their mission, their purpose for the last 7 years is, it's wrong that thousands of people die a year from poor hygiene. So they want to make hand washing the thing that reduces deaths across countries. They've been doing that for 7 years. They're a soap brand, so of course it made sense. Right now, I know my home country is Ghana, West Africa, and they're driving awareness of their hand washing trucks to actually promote that ability to wash your hands. But guess what? all the developed nations need that as well. So where are the soap brands, those brands really stepping up, and where are their hand washing trucks that they're taking around communities, taking around homeless communities? They don't exist because it's not baked into their brand and their activation. So you've got a bunch of activation and experiential marketing agencies who have lost a lot of opportunities, and you've got a lot of brands who don't know what to do or haven't done anything, and there are solutions that they never valued. It never became part of the DNA. So right now, in the developing nations, you've got hand washing trucks, but in the US, unless someone could correct me, I don't see that. So this is the irony. I think a lot of those brands are getting found out now, and so the smaller brands, the more entrepreneurial brands, and for me, the ones that should do it well are the non-profits who are feeding communities, who the soup kitchens, the meal providers who are stepping up right now because people are going hungry. You've seen the food banks. You've seen the queues, like 5 hours to get something, or to not get something. You wait 5 hours to not be able to get something from the food pantry because everything's been given away because there's so much hunger out there. Those are the organizations doing it well, and that's where I'm spending my attention. For me, non-profit marketing, non-profit communication, non-profit social media, those are the people doing it really well right now.
Here's a great example. If I don't know if anyone's seen this, I saw this a couple of days ago. There's a restaurant here in New York City called 11 Madison. If you're lucky, you've been there on someone else's expense account. Obviously, they're closed. Every other restaurant is closed. So one of the most upmarket exclusive restaurants in New York City has reopened to serve free meals to first responders.
Right, perfect.
And I'm like, fucking amazing.
Yeah.
That is probably the single best brand action in scare quotes I've seen through this whole scenario. Again, just do it. Don't talk about it. Don't do it over there in the developing market and do a case study about it. Step up.
Yeah, that's why for me, not the non-profit, the charitable, all of those are going to be the case study. So next year when Cannes does run, I want, and all these award ceremonies and all these marketing best practices, they better be 90% non-profit or these types of charitable causes where people who had no right to step up stepped up, and the people who should have been doing it didn't. And these are entrepreneurial, they're scrappy, and they're very local. So that for me is what's inspiring right now. Great example.
And look, and there are people who are doing it. I can't remember who said this. I saw this floating around, which is, it's a pandemic, not a creative opportunity.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So the ones, and you look at all these brands who have done, I don't know if you saw, Coca-Cola did it, Audi did it, Volkswagen did it, where they separated the elements and go.
McDonald's was the famous one, yeah.
It's like, F off. Seriously.
Well, you also, since we started talking about ethics with this, as the lead into this conversation, I was looking at GameStop too, which in the States fought to stay open through some of the stay-at-home orders, and their brand case is, we are essential because we're providing entertainment to people that are trying to be responsible and stay at home. But it comes off as insincere and a phony brand move because they have never invested in a purpose until right now. To Samuel's point, it's just like, here we are, we're still open for business
because we're doing right for you, because you can stay up. Yeah, exactly. So this is why I'm loving purpose, because if you are the Patagonias of this world or the REIs of this world saying, look, we're going to keep our workers home because we want to protect them, you did that. On Black Friday, you close because you say people should be out in nature and with their families, not trying to make as much money. So now when you do it, it is completely on equity, it's completely on brand. But for the others, it's insincere because you're getting companies, as we talked about before, who are preaching that these essential workers, we're going to give them a $100 bonus for every 2 weeks. And you're going, hang on a minute. Really? Is that all you're giving them? And by the way, they don't even get sick pay. So now, so it's just very interesting how I think some of the leaders are thinking they're doing good, but in the new scrutiny and COVID-19 is really reassessing the values. And I don't know if I'm the first person to say, but we are going to be in this era of the new normal, which is the buzzword of the year right now. And where do things actually land in this new normal?
It only works, that being purpose-led only works if you're prepared to, sacrifice for it, right? A principle isn't a principle until it costs you something. And, REI, as you pointed out, it's a great example. Patagonia is a great example. GameStop, terrible example, because it looks like they're just trying to make money. And, so I think the purpose conundrum is sort of inextricably tied to, late stage capitalism and the demands of quarterly shareholder returns. The companies that we're all talking about as sort of paragons of virtue in this space tend not to be publicly held. So, I think this actually will, eventually this raises some very interesting questions about the nature of our economic model, frankly.
Yeah,
and
it really
that
does.
can't happen soon enough.
Well, I want to move on. I want to talk next about the fact that Facebook seems to be coming out of this looking pretty good. Their image has been tarnished over the last few years, if is, I guess, the kind way to say it. But with COVID-19 raging, a lot of people are turning to the platform, and it's making them look good in the process. We're going to get to that in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about our sponsor for today, Methodify by Delvinia, and give you a chance to get a $20 Amazon gift card. That's right, you heard it right. They've changed the offer. It's now a $20 Amazon gift card just for checking them out. Look, if you've been listening to the show for the last month, we have been discussing a lot about the coronavirus, about COVID-19, and how it's affecting the marketing and advertising industry, as well as the people involved in it, as well as consumers and the society as a whole. And you may have seen, as we've discussed just a little bit earlier in the show, that McDonald's released an ad in Brazil that separated the arches for social distancing, and the majority of people seeing it felt that it was not appropriate. Now, everyone's on edge a little bit right now. People are pretty scared. Brands are also scared because behind every brand are real people like you making these decisions. And you're going to make a bonehead missed decision once in a while if you don't take a look at it first and really examine it. If you just react to the moment and not really think through what exactly is going on and what this is going to look like and how it's going to be received. This is where our sponsor, Methodify by Delvinia, can help you. Methodify collects real feedback from your actual customers on concepts or creative before you release it into the world. And the whole process takes hours, I said, not days. Methodify gives insight professionals and senior marketing people the information they need to power better decisions that will protect your brand and help you in this new world that we're living in. Now, just this past weekend, Methodify was used to test digital creative for another fast food chain, not this one, not the one we talked about earlier, but another fast food chain, to make sure the messaging wasn't tone deaf. It was invaluable information for them, and Methodify can do the same for you. Actual customer feedback is a game changer because in times like these, brands that wait and see are going to wind up making costly mistakes. So connect with your customers. Definitely do that. Build relationships. Go ahead. Build trust. Build fans. Do it all, but test everything. And Methodify can get you started today. To find out more about Methodify and to set up a demo, just Methodify it. Literally, Methodify it. Go to methodify.it/BeanCast. That's methodify.it/BeanCast. And as a way of saying thanks, every BeanCast listener who signs up and completes a demo will receive a $20 Amazon gift card. It's a code that you get right in the mail. You can in your email, and you can use it right away. And it's coming to you just for your time, just for checking them out. And heaven knows we all have plenty of time at the moment, so go ahead. That address, again, is methodify.it/BeanCast, and we thank them very much for their support of our program. Now, after a few years of the Facebook brand being dragged through the mud, in a time of corona isolation, we find Facebook's image to be on the ascendancy. They are a vital platform for connecting at a critical time. They are committing money to journalism and news outlets. They're making all kinds of moves that seemingly make them look pretty darn good. Brandy, are we really on the verge of giving Facebook a pass now, or is this more of a marriage of convenience at the moment and they'll just go back to being everyone's whipping boy when it comes down to it? I mean, what's going on here?
No, I think, the road to redemption for Facebook is a long one. And you know that saying that calamity is a great teacher. And I think that is what we are seeing with Facebook. I have read, a number of articles where people who said, probably 2017, they deleted the app. They were never going to get back on Facebook. I even think Walt Mossberg even said he was like, I'm done with Facebook. But he's now back, as are many others, because as we slowly started getting cut off from the outside world thanks to coronavirus, we're looking for ways to connect. And if you think about what Facebook originally, going back to kind of brand purpose, what their values were, what they stood for before everything got kind of muddied with losing public trust, data privacy, and what have you. It was all about connection. That was what it was supposed to do. This sense of community, togetherness, started as a sense of community for college students, and then of course, snowballed to pretty much the world. Well, when you have the world at its knees and, most of the world stay at home orders and you can't, well, let me get on Facebook. I want to connect with my family. I want to connect, check in on people since I can't physically go there to see them or to talk to them or touch them. So I'll just get on Facebook now, is what people are saying. Going back to, I think, something Sam said earlier, I don't want to say the new normal because I don't know what that is. And I don't think any of us know what the new normal is. All we know is that our lives, the way we work, how we interact, commerce, business, politics, religion, whatever you want to call it, it's all changed. Mm-hmm. Nothing will ever be the same. Nothing. Where we go from here, what that looks like, I don't know. But going back to the road to redemption for Facebook, somebody could say, I am all in on Facebook now. I trust them now because I have no choice, right? What other alternative do I have if I want to stay in touch with people? Now, when things slowly return to whatever they're going to return to, is Facebook going to learn from the sins of the past? And like I said, calamity being this great teacher and what they should have been doing all along, or like you said, they're going to fall back in. It's going to be interesting to see. I, for one, am curious, but I think a lot of people, just given where we are and you're not able to, connect with your family and friends, have gone back to the platform because that's what it allows us to do.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. A lot of people who left Facebook rather spectacularly, as most people do, is someone says you don't just leave social media, you leave with a huge post explaining why you're leaving social media. But, with all these people coming back and so many new players coming in and using digital platforms to communicate with each other, do we all envision a future at this point where even if we don't need to self-isolate, even if we're able to go out to the bar or to the restaurant to meet with people, that some people will be choosing to do more of this digital connecting on an ongoing basis because they've experienced it and it's brought them a certain amount of joy that they didn't realize it could bring? And I'm wondering if, that's a lasting effect, a lasting halo effect that will lift all the different digital platforms. I mean, everything from Facebook to Twitter to Zoom to Skype, which we're using to record this call. I mean, is that all going to be on the ascendancy at this point?
I mean, I think so. I think, like I said, I think the way that we interact, the way we move, the way we learn, the way we teach, the way we consume things, it's all changed. It is all changed. And nobody had a handbook for this. Nobody had, instructions. There is no IKEA graph that shows you how to, do this, how to get through a global pandemic. I know people want to say, oh, go back to war times, go back to this, go back to that. It's all different, right? And so social connectedness has changed. So like you said, there are people who might be like, I kind of like this, being able to go to a house party and not actually be at a house party. I want to keep doing this.
Or
right?
get together with friends and play Cards Against Humanity, which is what I did last night. I mean, it's just like...
Did you have like the best time?
Yeah, I had the best time. It's just like everybody had a card deck on their phone and everybody played the same game and we're all on Zoom and enjoying each other's company with each other. And it was probably more fun to do it that way than to go to someone's house.
Totally.
Can I just say that, Brandy, I've not met you physically. This is our first meeting virtually, but I do have to correct you. IKEA actually did have an instruction manual on how to stay home. I think it was 2 slides. It was like the brand logo and then a house with people in it. And that was their contribution to the whole. And I'm not even joking. That's actually a real one. So thank you, IKEA, for telling us to stay home.
I believe you. It's funny that you say that. So funny enough. So also, too, with Bob's talking about Facebook, I don't know if you saw, but Facebook actually released some security guidelines on how to best work from home and how to be secure working from home. I thought that was kind of funny.
Thanks, yeah, exactly. Facebook want to tell us,
Right?
Meanwhile,
I was like, oh, this is funny.
Meanwhile, it came out that Zoom and was, I think a lot of somehow it was leaking or there was a connection with Facebook, even if you didn't have an account, that they had your details. So there's some sort of relationship or ad relationship between Zoom and Facebook, which unfortunately that's some of the old practices happening. So Bob, I think your core of your question, I would like to believe the future will be different. I think the same people are in charge, and I'm not getting any feelings from Cheryl or Mark that things have changed and how they're doing it. So yes, I will give people a second chance or third chance or whatever it is, but there isn't any signaling and there isn't any evidence so far that things have changed. So that's what concerns me. And as I was reading around on this, there was a piece questioning why Mark Zuckerberg was actually interviewing Anthony Fauci, who's I think the head of CDC or senior medical person at the CDC. Why was it that Zuckerberg was interviewing him and not someone else within the Facebook organization? Was he doing it because he wants to place himself in this kind of position? So there's some questions there. But on the positive side, in terms of how we are engaging using the new technology, again, researching this, there was some evidence that in this current COVID-19 environment, people are searching, not only are they sharing coronavirus information, so let's actually make sure that all these platforms are linked to the bona fide sources, which is good. They're stepping up and making sure they're suppressing the fake news and elevating the quality information. But people now at home, stressed out, there's mental illness and all of these challenges. That's now no longer a niche thing that we do once a year. I think Pinterest was saying they're seeing more traffic to that content on their sites, even like a Pinterest. So now these organizations have the power and have the resource to actually help us be more healthy, more happy, and to engage in productive relationships, to educate our kids and provide resources to do that. I feel for everyone, the parents out there, because they're having a really hard time dealing with whatever it is, quadratic equations and all these questions, and they aren't equipped for. So I think a lot of these companies now are by force providing utility beyond what they've done in the past. But as we know, if they give you a 6-month subscription for free, are they just going to? Is it a long-term P&L play, or is it a genuine? What happens now if you give it to schools for free now, which don't have budgets? There are millions of kids in the US who don't have internet access, who have been given laptops. What do? The internet providers, do you charge them in 12 months' time, or do you find a way to amplify your benevolent activities to make sure there's no kid without the internet in the US so that they can be educated remotely? So there are these dilemmas which will crop up, because do people just go back to business as usual and charge full price for everything, or do they reevaluate their P&L? And is that sustainable? So now we're thinking about, do people who give bonuses or whatever to workers now, do they take it back? So what's the value equation? What's the P&L that these startup-y companies tend to have, where they outsource the cost and they treat everyone as as independent contractors? What is the new relationship, and how are we going to set that up? Is all this content that's free behind the firewall for coronavirus, are they just going to charge more for it afterwards? Are they going to charge for everything? Are these companies,
that's something that
the streaming companies, are they going to charge us for their content, or are they just going to keep giving us content for free? What's going to happen?
That's another aspect of what Facebook has been doing that's been raising their star as far as the overall impression we have of them. I mean, they did some PR moves in terms of getting money out, or at least committing money to local journalism and committing it to news organizations and keeping that sector of the world alive, because they're really being hit bad by lack of ad sales at this particular moment. So I would love to get I would love to get someone's opinion on this. I mean, it's just like, how do we feel about the PR moves that have been made so far by them, and is it enough?
Well, there's another question besides the PR moves, the interview of Dr. Fauci and other steps they've taken. Their brand was tarnished because of all these security lapses, and after the 50th or 80th one, I can't keep track, it started to feel like those are bad people running that. They're doing these things intentionally. And then we're all immersed. All of a sudden, everybody's working remotely. We're all on Slack calls, Zoom, every technology under the sun. I have 50 live chats going at the same time. And all of a sudden you start to realize, oh, Zoom isn't secure. That's a leaky boat. There's my kids are on there for school. You start to realize, oh, yeah, you know what? Security is actually kind of hard. And it's really hard to predict how people will use it, and that people will invent these ideas like Zoom bombing, where they just raid a site and just destroy it for pretty much just for kicks. And so when you look at Facebook now, and it is providing the utility that so many people have found back in it of, okay, well, at least I can connect to my relatives. The PR starts to feel more earned, and the security lapses, they haven't been very vocal about saying, see, we told you it's not easy to do, But I feel like some of the brand repair they're experiencing is because consumers are saying, you know what, I don't care if Zoom is really secure right now because my kids need to learn math and that's the way the school is going to do it and it's free. So I am okay with that. And therefore, I'm tolerating this security lapse. And so I can let Facebook off the hook for some of the things that I may have been holding in my mind about them in the past.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
that's
I
Brand,
agree
let's
with
give
that.
Brandy the last word on this
Sure.
topic. What do you think in terms of?
No, I agree with Adam. I think it's just people are willing to give a pass because of the situation that we find ourselves in. And whether it's a good PR move or we think, they're, like I said, they are literally on this road to redemption to try and make right the wrongs that they've done. And if someone can connect with someone, if, I know there's a Facebook group out here for a number of small businesses or women-owned small businesses, minority-owned small businesses, where they get together on Facebook and they talk about, how can we support each other? How can we help each other? If people are getting what they need at this current moment, these coronavirus times from Facebook, I think what Adam said before is like, okay, I will forgive you for this because I need you to help me do X, Y, Z. Going back to Sam's point, the real question is, like I said, I'm really interested to see when we have a recovery, however, it's going to be a slow recovery, but whenever we have a recovery, how is Facebook going to emerge from that? I want to see what's going to happen, but I do think people have given them a pass because they need them for connection, for social connectedness, for community. They need Facebook to show that they care. And so I think that's what they're doing.
And
Well,
I'd add to that and say that the things that are causing some form of redemption for Facebook are less to do with what Facebook is doing. It's less to do with who Zuck is interviewing, and it's more to do with the fact that that us as humans are using social media and using indeed the internet in the way it was actually intended, as opposed to this heavy dark manipulation machine that it had kind of turned into. And the absence of advertising money flowing into it right now as everyone's watching their budgets is concurrently we're witnessing exactly what you described, small groups of people who are using social media to help each other out. It's not Facebook really doing it. It's just Facebook being the platform that it was, it perhaps should always have been. So there's an interesting argument around, maybe in this time of crisis, we're actually using social media better because we need it. And the sort of the horrible financial predatory capitalism sort of pressure on the social media ecosystem has eased off to allow that. So it's interesting. It feels like the internet now is a little bit more something that Tim Berners-Lee would have liked, as opposed to maybe what we'd have seen 6 months ago.
Very good point. Well, let's move on to a less controversial subject, politics. So 2020 is looking a whole lot different than we expected, but perhaps the most glaring surprise in terms of the advertising world is the expected U.S. political ad blitz has not materialized. Adam, when does it come back? Because it's got to come back. What's the ethics here about political advertising? When do you start bashing the president when he's in the middle of a crisis and in charge of everything? I mean, it's just like this is a really, really tough situation that the political campaigns find themselves in.
Well, I ask you, does it have to come back? Is there any way that we could all agree as a nation to say no more ads? I doubt it. I wish we could. But I have seen, I think it is either a fake ad or something that is just circulated on social, but I saw an ad that is purported to be from the Biden campaign showing President Trump making statements in real time as he's been dealing with this going back 3 months. And then it paid off with the Biden for President slogan, but I have not seen it on TV. And I have a belief about any kind of advertising that context is a religion to me. And there's no really good way for any candidate bashing the president, bashing anybody who's an incumbent, or saying anything will come across in pretty poor taste. I mean, in the Democratic Party, there's still two candidates. There's still two people that are trying to earn that nomination. And they've both been, for the most part, silent, except for a few awkward interviews. And they've demonstrated, Bob, what you referenced. They're hemming and hawing and really not wanting to say anything out of line because it doesn't feel appropriate. However, there will be an election in November. I do not think they're going to move it unless something dramatically different happens, which so far I've been wrong every time I've said this is going to get better. And I think in the next, May, June period, we're going to start seeing those ads. Those ads are going to come back, and not just the presidential campaign ads, but also in congressional districts and gubernatorial races where there's really critical, heated races going on, because they know that buying those points and getting their attention and getting their share of voter turnout is critical, and there's no other way to do it. So I don't think we're off the hook from it, but I think you're looking at probably the time frame will be related to when sports come back. If there are programs that will be drawing viewers and that are making people feel like there's a distraction, that is a 3-hour window, be that NBA games or Major League Baseball has been talking about doing some kind of a modified game setup. If they can get those types of programs, because I think that's the other side, is not just it's in poor taste during a pandemic to be advocating for yourself as a candidate, which you could do in a tasteful way. They typically don't, or haven't in 10 years. But there's also the programming. I have to buy points at such a volume, and there's really not a great way to do that right now because everybody's streaming, everybody's avoiding things. We're watching news, but we're watching our own channel based on our take already. So I know what channel the Republicans are already watching. I already know what channel the Democrats are watching, and there's really no way to cross people or win those battleground voters.
I want Brandy to weigh in on this a little bit, because it's just like what you're saying makes a lot of sense, Adam. But there's got to be a positive way to do this. I know that you mentioned, advocating for yourself might be in poor taste, but isn't there a case to be made that this current situation warrants another look at what the healthcare plans of the candidates are, or something? Is there not something positive that can be put out there that a campaign can say, we will do this job for you and we will take care of you?
I mean, but isn't that what they were supposed to do? I mean, isn't the question, well, because of the situation that we're in, somehow now it changes? But that's not going to happen. I can't say, well, look, during COVID, you failed me. And so as we come out of it, are you going to do X, Y, Z? Shouldn't that have been something they said before this even started? Like, shouldn't that have been a promise or something that you could say to me, as a constituent, as a voter, prior to, finding ourselves in a global pandemic? So, like you said, is there something positive? Is your question, Bob? Well, now that we're in the situation we're in, they should do something? Or is your question, once this all kind of happens, can they do something?
Well, I mean,
Oh, look at that, Bob. See what happened there? It's been reversed on you, Bob. And I like this show. This version, Brandy. Is this your show?
Yeah.
Or is this Bob's?
Yeah. Brandy and I are friends.
We are, Adam.
That was incredible.
I was like, damn, that was cool. But actually, Bob, I'll rescue you. I just got a thought here. Because as I was listening there, I'm being British from overseas, been in the US 10 years now. And as I look, 11 years, as I kind of observe, it's interesting how what the politics should be about. It's about the economy. It's about jobs. It's about economic development. However, over the last few cycles, it's always come back to this pesky thing called social issues. They seem to constantly come back up as actually the driver of, healthcare and people's rights and how. So it just seems to come full circle every time. That's just one observation. The other thing is, if you understand anything about the super PACs and how the agendas out there, the money, it'll come back, Bob. It may not be there right now, but it'll come because there's too many vested interests and too much at stake and too much money in their pockets. So,
well, there's certainly some political action money out there. I mean, I'm watching the news programs and you see political action campaigns that are trashing the president, but they're not associated with any particular opponent campaign. It's just really just a total negative spin on what the president's doing. So, I mean, those types of advertisements are still in play, but it's just so odd to me that in the middle of an election year, especially this election year, to see no ads at all. It's almost like all the challengers have been silenced completely.
Well, there was some stuff. I saw an ad the other day, actually, which for me was so powerful. It was from an organization, I think a nurses organization, who are out there saying, look, save us, save our lives, get us the equipment that we need, give us the conditions that we need to succeed as nurses. So I think it's an interesting one. The silence is deafening from a lot of the candidates. And if you think about it, maybe they're just not equipped. A lot of them are kind of rebooting their strategies. I remember one of the candidates did like a video for the first time like 3 weeks ago. And even even I think the CNN, whoever said, yeah, you need to invest in a better camera if you're going to do it like this, Joe. And it was like, damn, they kind of burned him, because I don't know if they're ready for this reality. And it's taking them a while to reboot, to revise their strategy. But I can't believe they're not working on it. But maybe we're not the target, Bob. I'm not seeing a lot of it from them. And maybe it's out there just in a different form. But a lot of the traditional best ways of, driving voters is through outreach or knocking on doors and all that kind of very local, physical, face-to-face time. So it's going to be interesting. Have they pivoted, or are they pivoting to more a virtual or digital way to do that? And are they just advertising very locally, hyper locally, and not through the traditional means that maybe we tend to see?
And Samuel, you've raised a good issue that a lot of what's happening and what some of the side effects and the real meat of the issue with the pandemic touch on these social issues, which during a typical campaign cycle can seem very black and white to a lot of voters. And now there's a hell of a lot of gray area where all of a sudden, some of those things that I would have called socialism last year, maybe I'm like, well, some kind of a safety net seems good because 5 of my neighbors just lost their jobs.
Right.
And now it's a different thing. Right. So if politicians have a tough time really coming out with the fire and brimstone of their platform, because everything is more highly politicized, but also grayer and murkier. There's so much middle ground now that they could stumble into and create trouble for themselves.
Things like the minimum wage,
healthcare.
Healthcare
too.
Minimum wage, things like that, benefit, sick pay. That used to be let the market decide. But now, is it right that people are like having to get train drivers? There was a really sad case of a bus driver who recorded a video of someone on the bus who was coughing out loud and not covering up the mouth, and the man died 2 weeks later. He died 2 weeks later. And so when you start to see that kind of thing happening, it's not them, it's now messing up the traditional, the rules of engagement, and the ideologies now have to, as you say, it's now gray. And in the world of gray, when everything had to be black and white, what are you for or against? Now you're going to have to move. So my ambition is, my hope is that the politicians and the leaders do move their position. But it's hard when you've said something for 7 years. Now you're going to have to backtrack and pivot. But in the world we live in, I think that the consumer, the audience, the voters, us as people are now in a different place, and we'll be receptive to those messages. So I think this is a great topic you called out, Bob, because let's see how it evolves, because you put it out a valid thing, but I've not seen the folks in the driver's seat actually take action. So this is great point, and let's see what happens.
Well, and I think the platforms too are going to change as well. Like you're going to see, we're so used to seeing ads like TV, but now Google, YouTube, since there's this huge dependency on technology, we're going to start seeing this be a part of, it should be, Google and YouTube should be a part of anyone's election strategy, because everyone's on Google, but everyone's going to go to a YouTube video if you're not sitting in front of a television or you're not watching TV or what have you. I do think that that's something we have to think about now. Not only are we're different in how we receive the messages, but then how do you distribute the messages? How do you distribute your ads?
Yeah.
Because of all that we're going through.
Well, it's maybe a sign of the times, moving on to our final topic of the night, that the biggest ad story of the entire week is probably the least important thing we're going to discuss, but it's official. The Cannes Ad Festival has been canceled this year. Jason, does a year off from award shows really hurt the industry? I mean, we've talked about this many times on the show over the last few weeks about will they or won't they, but now that it's happened, what's your thoughts?
I think it's like doing dry January. I think it's a very good thing. I think, look, don't get me wrong. I've enjoyed my fair share of jollies in the south of France, and I've been lucky enough to win a few Lions in my career and what have you. And Cannes has done great things for me. I'm very appreciative, and I have a good time there. But it is also symbolic of the worst of our industry. You know, it can be like this sort of horrible creative circle jerk where so much of the work that is being nominated and lionized is frankly nonsense, never ran. I think that I'm going to go. I think someone said this before about awards for things that happened during coronavirus. I think if Cannes comes back next year, there should be a blanket ban on anything that happened during coronavirus, that you shouldn't be allowed to enter it and you shouldn't enter it. But look, I think, frankly, a year off will give everyone a little taste of sobriety, and it might force us to reassess what we spend our money on. You know, like you look at the amount of money that is lavished in Cannes. I mean, fun fact, the advertising festival in Cannes is a week long. The film festival is 2 weeks long. The advertising festival contributes twice as much money to the local economy as the film festival does, which tells you a lot about the relative alcohol consumption of advertising people versus film people.
It does.
And frankly, that's money that can be better spent elsewhere. Would I rather take my awards money, and which is, let's be honest, it's millions of dollars for each of the holding companies. I would rather take that money and invest it in some shit hot young creative talent to make the work better.
Can you say some shit hot? Can you say some diverse creative talent? Because that's a big thing that's missing from Cannes. Can you say some diverse?
The money, yes, 100%. Let's do it ever. They can take that money and hire some shit hot and diverse creative talent.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Female, black women, black men, Latinas, yes.
Oh, come on. There aren't any of those in advertising, surely.
Right.
Do they exist?
They're nowhere to be found.
They're nowhere to be found. We don't know where they are.
Because if you go to, if you look at ad color, where are all the black people? We don't know where they are. They're missing somewhere.
Well, actually, I think you do raise a point there, because as I'm thinking about this, one of the things that I used to drive me insane about these conferences, these events, these Cannes, is that you wouldn't see the diversity was missing. And, we don't know where they are, we can't find them. But in this coronavirus world where everyone's at home and we're digitally connected, you could absolutely find the speakers. You could absolutely find the talent. And they're available.
In minutes.
Yeah, and so for me, it's really interesting if things revert back to normal. We don't know where they are, because you do. And so for me, but the fact it's the fourth topic tonight, and also, I don't want to suck out all the joy, because I'm a marketer. I do love marketing. I do love the innovating and creating new and motivating people and engaging, really solving problems for people and consumers and customers out there. I love all that. But is it really that important? It feels like if this is the environment of a depression or recession, and all of these come in one, to go back to these jollies in Cannes, which is superficial and has been criticized for so many years as who it excludes and how it works, just that whole system. And also the other thing, just the pragmatic thing, is if you think about it, everyone's had to cut it from their P&L this year. So how are they going to put it back into next year's P&L? Yet we've got rid of 40% of the staff. We furloughed everyone's taken a cut, but we're going to go to Cannes. I don't know how you do it the same way. They're going to have to come up with something more innovative, more hybrid digital and physical, and just do it differently. Or maybe other platforms step up to replace it, which probably won't happen. It's going to have to be different.
Having been on the governor board of one of the major marketing awards out there, and it's just like we've done a lot of analysis of what happens at Cannes, and the reason Cannes became as popular as it was is because of the destination. I mean, it's just like, yes, it attracted all the ad people to one place. Yes, it was a prestigious award. But the big reason that people were committed to the award happening on a yearly basis was because it happened in the south of France. And location matters an awful lot. I don't think that they can replicate the entire experience online and keep the prestige that they've developed over the years.
But I would also challenge, look, I'm going to put prestige in scare quotes. I think it's very important. Yes, it's very important to one's career. It's a networking opportunity. Winning Lions is good for getting your next job and so forth. But there's an element which is it's just us talking to ourselves. some years ago when I lived in London, I'd been at the D&AD Awards, and we'd done very well. And I got in a cab at the end of the night, slightly tipsy perhaps, and got in the black cab, and the cabbie was like, "Oh, have you been?" And I had my penguin suit on, and the cabbie was like, "Oh, have you been at a do tonight, sir?" And I said, "Yeah, it was like an advertising awards night." And he was like, "Awards for advertising? Whatever will they think of next, Governor?"
I love British. You see, the British cabbie keeps it real. That is that's the American equivalent of the keeping it 100. Exactly. I knew where that story was going to go, because I'm like, really, dude, that's where you were? Yeah. So if advertising and marketing, if we're all talking to ourselves and not raising the bar, the prior conversation we were talking about Facebook, and I was thinking it should be a race to the top, not a race to the bottom, or the least worst option is the winner. So I think all of these events now have to really do some soul searching, and I think some of them are going to struggle, and I want some of them to come back in the same way and fail, because if we are in this era of the new normal, you cannot do the same thing next year and expect everyone to come back, be swigging the champagne, be giving each other awards, and be shaking hands on the same deals. That's just, it's a fake environment when you've known people who've died. Just from what we're coming out of, I just cannot believe that people will just revert back, which does give us an opportunity. And if the leadership of those organizations kind of receptive, you can reach out to me. I can help you with it. But I think there are ways forward. I'd like to see it come back in a better way. But yeah, I think your point, Bob, if the only reason people are there is because it's in the south of France, then I guess.
Well, no, that's not the only reason. I'm not suggesting that's the only reason they're there, but that's a big reason why it became so popular. And it's just like, yes, there is a legitimate reason to go there. There's great education. There's great networking. There's lots of, of the people who matter for your career and for your business. I understand that. And it's very true. But it got that way because it's in the south of France. And we need to recognize that fact in terms of any kind of future for it. Well, for that it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. But before we get to that segment of the show, I do want to take this quick opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do a shameless plug, starting with Brandy Boatner. You can find her at ibm.com. That's a site that you should easily find. I'm not really thinking that's too hidden. Brandy, what do you got going on besides staying at home right now? What are you doing? What do you want to promote?
I just want to say that IBM is one of the brands. We are actually leveraging our technology to help combat COVID-19. So if you go to ibm.com/COVID-19, you will see all the wonderful things that we are doing, like our recently we just released the Weather Channel app, where you can track COVID by the county level, whatever city you're in. You can see what the stats are, to our supercomputer, the Summit, that is working with researchers to find a cure, to our virtual learning and our online resources that are all open for students ages 14 to 20, parents, teachers, so that the virtual learning can continue all at no cost. So just wanted to let everybody know how IBM is doing our part with technology to combat this global pandemic.
That's great. That's really awesome to hear. And I'm doing a series of podcasts for a client right now about this as well, the work that a lot of these different companies that are in the technology fields are doing. And it's great to hear what IBM's doing on our behalf. Next up, Jason Lonsdale. You can find him at ogilvy.com. That's an agency we should all recognize. Tell us what's going on in your world, Jason. What would you like to promote?
Well, I'm going to go back to my earlier comment that it would be tacky to promote anything. But look, so what I'm going to promote instead is, and this might be my hobby horse at the moment, support your local businesses. If you've got a barbershop, a deli, whatever it is, a diner that's near you that's currently closed, and you love that joint, and it makes your neighborhood sing for you, then find a way to get them money. That's my plug. You want those guys to be around when the new normal, when normal life resumes. So look after them now.
I don't care what you say. I think it's perfectly fine to promote stuff on a marketing and advertising show. So I encourage us all to promote ourselves. Sam Money. Okay, Samuel Money. You can find him at marketingtransform.com. That's the home of his podcast and his consultancy. Tell us what's going on in your world, Sam. What would you like to promote?
Well, Bob, I am going to be shamelessly plugging the podcast Across the Pond, Marketing Transformed, which, as you said, you can find at marketingtransform.com. I co-host it with buddy of mine, Chris Lawson. He's based in the UK, I'm based in the US, and we like to really provide a platform to nourish and nurture people, marketers, whether you're new coming into the industry or more experienced, to provoke you to action, to help nourish you and give you solutions and put things you can put into practice to help you be more successful and be better. And right now we've been curating a number of shows which are really in this current environment. How do you build your personal brand, or how do you really become creative to solve your business challenges in the current climate? So we're really tweaking our content to be more attuned and to be more relevant to you. So we're really proud of that. And so check out the shows. We've got another episode coming out. They come out every Wednesday. So we're really proud of that. You can follow me at Samuel Money on Twitter, or you can find me on LinkedIn and hire me. So I'm a marketing transformation consultant. And if you like what you hear or intrigued, you can hit me up and let's go.
The first rule of podcasting, consistency. I'm really glad to hear you're releasing so regularly. That's awesome. Last but not least, Adam Pierno. You can find him at Arizona State University, which is asu.edu. Tell us what's going on in your world, Adam. What would you like to promote?
I actually have two quick things to promote, and they are both free. We at ASU have our charter is about getting education to the most people that we can in the world. And so we have gathered our most valuable learning resources, many of those at absolutely no cost. So if you are new to homeschooling and all of a sudden you have kids in your house and you're trying to figure out how to educate them, you can go to asuforyou.asu.edu. There are things for wherever you are in your learning journey. There is courseware, resources, tools, amazing access to research that is gathered from across the ASU enterprise. You can get it at that site. And I'm also giving away during this time my book, Specific. If you find my Twitter account, which is @apierno, it's the pinned tweet. If you click on that, it'll take you to a forum. It will not spam you unless you opt in. You can get the book for free, and just trying to find ways to keep people reading, thinking, learning during this time, since we all have to be self-isolating and staying responsible.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And great resources. Thanks for pointing them out. As for me, for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me. And of course, you can find out how to advertise on the program, and we'd really love to take you on as a sponsor right now. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. And now it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul, a rundown of the best and worst of advertising, marketing, and public relations for the last week. And because this week it's just kind of been a downer for a lot of reasons, I thought we'd just go completely fair with this one. It's my show. I can do whatever the heck I want. So we're going to go with 3 fairs. The first one, Restaurant Brands International, the owners of Popeye and Burger King, announced bonuses and 14 days paid sick leave for workers who come down with coronavirus. Now, I think this was, a little bit better than just doing the bonus thing, Sam, but it seems to be, I like the fact that they took a stance on this and that they included healthcare as part of the package.
Yeah, in the current climate, there is this mantra that I've heard from a lot of people in the food service, quick service area, like if I get sick, you get sick. And that's just bone chilling in terms of the current environment. So there are more that should be doing exactly this move and taking this step forward. And so I'm glad they're doing it, but there are others that don't. And so this is hopefully going to raise the bar for everyone who works in that space.
Now, the next fair that I've chosen for this week is the big tech reversal on their stance on coronavirus advertising. Brandy, when this first started, when the whole outbreak started and the quarantine started, a lot of the big tech companies put a ban on advertising about coronas and also bans on advertising showing up against coronavirus news. That's been loosened now. It seems to be a wise choice. It's all about connecting brands to people, no matter what the news is in terms of this. And every piece of news is about coronavirus. It seems like this is the time to allow this type of advertising, and it's better to be open than to be restrictive, right?
I think so. And I think, this sense, and we're craving social connectedness, and we want to see something or see a brand help us with our feelings of, isolation. We're feeling anxious, we're stressed out, all the things that we're feeling. It's good to see the brand says, yes, we care, or we will help provide ways for you to feel more connected, during these times. I can understand why there was the reversal, but then also, since there's such this dependency, I said before, on technology, it would be such a disservice if we did not reverse, the advertising and kind of focus on how tech is aiding, and amplifying social connectedness. So I get it. I do.
It's good. It's good. And the last but not least, the third fair that I picked out for this week is Teen Vogue is launching a virtual prom. Adam, one of the biggest impacts to a lot of high school students is obviously that this is all falling in the middle of prom season and graduation, and a lot of these students are not going to be able to do the prom that they always wanted to do. And instead, Teen Vogue has made a virtual prom that if your school participates, you can actually connect with all your fellow classmates and do a prom experience without actually having to be, face to face with someone. I think this is a really smart idea. It's totally on brand, and it completely meets the needs of the consumer who's a reader of this magazine.
What an absolutely beautiful gesture. Yes, it is smart and all of that, and it is on brand, but who cares? It's just such an amazing thing to do for kids that have been looking forward to this for years. I have family that have nieces and nephews that have been buying suits and dresses and waiting for this day, and now, bam, this happens. So it's just such an amazing gesture. I was so pleased to read about it.
That's an awesome one. Bob, before we close the show, can I just add a fourth?
Sure.
Fair, Bob.
Sure.
It's, I think, the biggest one, bigger than any other topic we've talked about this week, Bob. And I can't believe you didn't include it because Netflix have announced that next week there's going to be an extra episode of Tiger King. They're releasing it to the masses, and that is the one thing that everyone needs right now.
Oh my God, Tiger King is just such a force unto itself. We were on a Zoom call last night, and someone was actually playing Tiger King songs for us on his guitar. It was crazy. All right. Well, have a suggestion for this list or just want to discuss it? Comment online. Use the hashtag FairFailFoul. That's #FairFailFoul. And that does it for this week's show. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an Apple Podcast listener, we've also provided a direct link to our listing there, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory on the Apple Podcasts app. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C-Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Hope you'll join us then.
You know what I mean? It's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. Just like, okay, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly. It's like exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Cool beans.